Oh, good evening. I'm being assertive. And I'm sorry that I'm standing in front of Brad, but I need to do that for the introduction. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Fed, brought to you this evening by Brad Howarth, who is a fantastic author and freelance journalist, and Lavolta Digital. My name's Sally Mills. So a few thank yous before we crack on this evening, and that's always to mass media, to Traction, and to Viacorp. Thank you for your continued support, and a huge big thank you to Ninefold this evening, who are sponsoring the video. So big thanks. And if you don't know about Ninefold, they are the Australian cloud company. There you go. So without further ado, we're delighted to have on the hot seat tonight Tim Hughes, who is the CEO, Getaway Lounge, a company of Nine Entertainment. Please welcome Tim. Thank you.
Tim, thanks for coming down this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, you're like way over there, and while I'm being augmented by speakers, my eyes aren't so good, and I can't see you all. So there are plenty of seats down the front here. There's a lovely couch where you can sit. There's two couches here with only one person. If you want to get to know somebody and snuggle up, I'm sure these gentlemen wouldn't mind. So feel free to come forward. Otherwise, we'll pick on you later on in the night. All right, that one still couldn't budge them. Tim, thank you so much for giving up some time and coming down here to tell us about Getaway Lounge. Probably the first thing to do is maybe just get you to tell us what it actually is for the one or two people out there that don't know already, because everyone else will know.
So Getaway Lounge is a daily travel deal site. So we serve 4 to 7 travel deals a week with a time-limited ticker clock under the sort of the traditional daily deal model of a voucher fulfillment. And our little twist in the market is twofold. Firstly, obviously, we're travel only. So we're focusing just on travel products, not on keratin treatments, cupcakes and massages. And secondly, we carry the brand Getaway. So we're a startup in name, and a startup in attitude, and a startup in intent, but we're wholly owned by Channel 9, and we're able to borrow on the Channel 9 television show Getaway, both from a brand perspective and also from a cross-promotion and marketing perspective.
So tell me a little bit about the history then. How did this thing come about?
Sure. Well, Channel 9 has been very successful in the daily deal space with its investment in Kudo. So it's a half owner in the Kudo business alongside Microsoft, and decided that it wanted to try that in the travel specific space as well. And also having ownership of this brand, Getaway, which 90+% of Australians know. It's been on television for 20+ years. And so a chance to sort of focus in on daily deals in travel, but also make a little bit of money and a bit of a promotional benefit out of the Getaway brand.
Okay. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of discussion of the daily deal sites, the group buying sites, and we've seen a huge number of them burst into the scene in a relatively short period of time. Yeah. How do you feel about the longevity of the market? What makes you think that you're going to be doing this job 12 months from now?
It is quite extreme. I do have a lot of grey hair, and so I was actually around in 1999 and 2000 when the dot-com bomb hit. In fact, I very famously joined Expedia as my first sort of dot-com job 2 days before the NASDAQ halved. So I actually lived it like on the day that the whole thing fell apart. So I've seen bubbles and I've seen destruction, and I can categorically say this is not a bubble or destruction at all compared to those days. They were days in which you can truly say a bubble. That said, we saw such a massive explosion in this sector in the second quarter of last year. So about this time, May, June, July, this time, not only in Australia but around the world, and saw sales and deals do numbers that no one imagined possible. So anything after that is going to seem like a little bit of a letdown. But we have to put that letdown in perspective. We're still looking to do in the daily deal sector in Australia some $500 million in sales. We're probably going to see $120 million of that in travel. And even valued at $12 versus its float price of $20, Groupon is still an $8 billion company. So we do know that this sector, while it's down from its heyday of Q2 last year, is still viable and is still highly attractive.
Right. Now, I know that being a part of Channel 9, you can't break out revenue numbers and all of that stuff, so we won't go there. But how's it done? I mean, how are you going with regard to support from the public, and how active is it?
Sure. Look, travel's a very interesting a sector to be doing deals in, because theoretically someone could buy, a cupcake deal every day for, all year, and you can rely on them. Whereas travel, you need to get people at the right time. And as a result of which, it's a real roller coaster business. Smashing months and okay months, smashing months and okay months. But we're very happy with the growth rates that we're having, and we're very happy with the performance that we've got.
Right. And how are you going with regard to sign-ups then?
Sure, so we're at a database size of about 190,000, which again, if you compared it to a Living Social of, I think I've got 1.8 or a Kudo 1.9, it's a lot lower. But then we're selling a very targeted product in travel. So 190,000 Australians who've signed up to get travel is a big number, we're very happy with it. We're also happy with our Facebook level, right around about 32,000 likes on Facebook. And it's a very active community. We can talk about that some more. And we think as a ratio, that's a very strong ratio to have, kind of 35,000 Facebook likes to about 190,000 in the database.
Okay. So how does it work then? I mean, if you're looking for a keratin treatment, you see the daily deal, bang, you do it. It's $57 and what have you. A holiday can be thousands of dollars, particularly for some of the ones I was looking at on your site. And while you do give them up to a week, I think, or sometimes more to make the decision, it's often hard to make a decision to spend a couple of $1,000s at 7 days' notice. How does it work? I mean, how do you actually make sure these deals drop?
It is. And I think a couple of things we learned from that, because it is a short lead time in a deal, that we had these notions of Getaway Lounge being an amazing place to inspire people to go that they'd never thought of before in their lives. And unfortunately, the deal model doesn't work so well in doing that. If you try to convince somebody, even with 50% off, to go to Patagonia, which they've never been to before, it just doesn't work because they need more time to think about it and plan about it. But in destinations that people know about, or that are on the slight fringes of places people know about, and I'll give you examples of what I mean. Phuket, Australians know about, and Khao Lak, which is about 90 minutes north of Phuket, Australians are learning about. This model works very well because people know the destination. What they're looking for is someone to help them find a place in the destination, or help them to find a bit of inspiration in that destination. So we don't have to convince Australians to go to Phuket, or much to go to Khao Lak, but we have to convince them that this is the hotel you want to choose, and here's a deal at a great hotel to go to.
What would be the best deal that you've done? What's proven to be the most popular?
It's so funny to say, completely against all expectations. Our most successful deal has been a health farm on the hinterland of the Gold Coast, a place called Camp Eden, where you go for 5 days and you get your liver cleansed and you do archery and you go sleeping on grass mats. And it's not a cheap a deal in the sense that it's not like $299 for 6 nights. It's about $1,600 for 5 nights. But the product is good and the discount is sharp, and when we put it up, it flies off the shelf.
Anyone been there?
Anyone even heard of it? I mean, it's...
yeah. I've not.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Which is nice to know that we might go... It's good to know that we're not just going to Bali all the time then.
And that's it. And look, the destinations that work internationally, Australians have an insatiable appetite for international travel. One of the other things, we planned that we would sell probably 85% of our transactions would be domestic, generating about 60% of our revenue. In fact, about 45% of our transactions are domestic, and domestic generates less than 40% of our revenue. So
is that because of the high dollar?
Because of the high dollar.
Right.
Australians just, they have an insatiable desire at the moment to travel overseas, and we're playing a role in that. Yeah.
I guess the other thing that underpins all of this, though, is a vast change in the way that we actually book holidays.
Yes.
Compared to what we might have done 15 years ago. Yes. Where do you see the online travel market going? Because clearly we've seen the offline travel sector struggle significantly over the last 10 years.
Yeah. Look, it's a fascinating part, again, about the grey hair in the .com world. Online travel is a 16, 17-year-old business now. We first saw the first tickets and hotel rooms being booked in 94, 95 in America. For those of you who can remember, travel.com.au went public in Australia in 1998 or 97 or something or other. So it's a very mature industry. But the place we're at the moment is that people can book their hotels through What If or Booking a Go to Hotel Club. They can book their flights, Webjet, travel.com.au, Qantas, what have you. But what they still don't know how to do online but are desperate to do is get a little bit of inspiration on what to do next. I call it the move from answering closed questions, how much for a hotel in Melbourne for tomorrow night, to an open question, what should I do this weekend with my family? Or where's the fun place to go next? And the unambiguous trend right now in online travel is that all of that query, that sort of search activity or desire activity, is pouring online with no sustained way to answer it. You go to Qantas.com, and Qantas.com does not answer the question, where should I go next? It doesn't help you answer a question like, I've got $2,000 and I want to go to a holiday in July, somewhere within 4 hours of Sydney. It doesn't answer this question. So people are sort of fleeing the major travel sites with that question and trying to find the answer in other places. Facebook being a classic example, Twitter, forums, TripAdvisor being classic examples. So the amazing state we're at in online travel is that we're in Australia in a $4 or $5 billion business, globally a $400 billion business, yet we haven't cracked the code on how to answer an open-ended question. And that's the main question being asked right now by consumers. Yeah.
So I know that in addition to the work that you do with Getaway Lounge, you spend a lot of time looking at the online travel site, and you've got a very active blog in that area. Are there any particular initiatives or companies that you're watching with interest right now?
Well, there's a fascinating little bit of thing going on in Australia in terms of search at the moment. It's actually quite amazing. We've seen a lot both at these events and other events how active the startup community is in Australia. And I recently wrote a story about a bunch of very active startups in Australia in search, one of whom's here tonight. So we've seen a lot of activity going on in flight search. We've got Ian coming here from Get Flight, who's been trying to do a lot of stuff indexing.
Ian, put your hand up.
Indexing
Hey,
sale fares. We see a bunch of guys in Melbourne in a business called Adioso trying to get into natural language search. So you can type in, I want to go overseas sometime in the next month and get an answer. There's another bunch of guys in Melbourne with a business called Rome to Rio. So City Rome, number 2, and then Rio. And they're trying to do end-to-end search where you would type in Sydney to Cinque Terre and get starting with the train from a museum station to the airport and ending up with whatever the contact connection is from Milan to get you to Cinque Terre and all the bits and pieces in between. And all of these guys are trying to get around, and there's another company at the moment called Flight Fox that's...
I heard of them last week.
Was the fourth one that I profiled, where they say you tell them the routing you want to take, which is a common airline phrase that doesn't work so well in Australia given the context of the word routing, but the routing you want to take, and they will charge you a fee to find you a cheap fare. And all of these guys,
I think they actually use real people to go out and find the fees.
Human beings, yeah.
Find the fares for you, and then they pay them a cut on whatever you book.
Yeah. And all of this is around, again, this question that people are asking, which is saying, actually, destination is unimportant to me. It might be a question someone asked. I just want to be 6 hours from Sydney that's got a beach and a shack and a pina colada. There's 4 of us, and I want to spend more than $5,000. And it's very hard to get Expedia or Webjet or what if to answer that question. And God forbid you should go to a flight centre and ask them that question, because I'm an online person. There's no way I'd do that, right? No. So you're looking for it, and there's a lot of innovative Australian activity trying to answer that.
Out of curiosity, who in this room has actually booked and taken a holiday in the last year? God, that's sad. Isn't that sad? How many of you involved a travel agent in that transaction? There's, do you see much of a future for the old High Street Travel Centre?
Look, it's so funny. Good old Flight Centre keeps putting in record results every year, and in part due to the Australian dollar strength. But they're still able to solve that problem or solve that need of, I want to go more than one place. So if you just want to go to Melbourne, why would you go to Flight Centre? If you just want to go just to London, you can probably get away without not using Flight Centre. But if you want to go to London first and then Paris and then Rome and then home, online travel has not cracked that solution yet. And the best place to get that fare is probably going to be offline at a flight centre or on some other sort of call centre.
Fair enough. Well, change tack for a second. I want to come back to the company itself. You talked before about having built up a database of 190,000. I'm curious to know how you went about doing that, because clearly you've got some brand leverage from the TV program, and that would have helped. But what's been the most valuable tool that you've had in building that database up?
Without it, I'm an online guy. I didn't believe how powerful television could be. We did a very serious news story on a current affair about the launch of our business, and I got 25,000 people to sign up in under half an hour and brought the site down. It's quite extraordinary what good quality
good to have friends
television
in
journalism
high
can do
rating
for
places.
you.
Yeah.
I'm being silly, but the brand itself is a great way to deliver customers and getting regular mentions on television. But as we know, and we've got our paid search people are here as well from eChannel, they'll tell you that bidding at the right time when the TV is going is critical as well. If you just put up the TV and forget that half the people who watch it are going to Google your name, and you haven't supported that with a decent bit of paid search behind it, you're going to miss out on scores of customers. Okay. And we saw the bidding happen, not just around our brand name, but around all sorts of things associated with what was going on in the story. For example, we have Katrina Roundtree searching for us. So we started bidding on Katrina Roundtree because people would watch Katrina Roundtree speak, bid for, type in her name and find us on paid search activity around Katrina's name.
Normally the searches on her have topless at the end though, don't they?
Please.
Right, no. In terms of the activity that you're doing online, then you talked about Facebook as being a very strong tool for you. What about some of the other tools out there? Have you found anything else that's been effective in helping to build that database?
Look, the biggest ones will be TV, paid search and Facebook for us. And we sat down and thought about it because I've got this sort of idea been brewing in my head through a bunch of reading that I'm doing, that there are four main ecosystems now in the web. There is the general sort of ecosystem of Google, right, which is just sort of putting up web pages and using some sort of marketing format to get people to type in your name or something related to your product into Google and end up on your site. And that's clear. We spend a lot of time and energy on Google, and most people in this room do. Then I think Facebook itself is now a huge ecosystem. And managing Facebook is completely different to managing your placement on Google. Google is still very transactional, it's still very query focused, and it's still, your responses are very commercial to any query. When someone types in our name or types in a deal, we respond immediately with, here's the price, here's the location, here's the percentage off, get engaged in that straight away. But the ecosystem of Facebook is one whereas if we mention price or commerce too early, we just get howled down and we get screamed at. And we spend most of our time talking about, which is easy to do, fun things to do in travel, unrelated to us. What do you see as the best holiday you can do? Here's a photograph of a beautiful place. What do you guys think about it? What are you planning to do this weekend? Easter's coming up. What are you planning to do? And try and say, we've got this sort of brand halo around being experts in travel from the Getaway Show. So let's be the place where people come and talk about getting away. And if we mention a price or we mention a deal, we'll try and do it in that context and not be at all commercial. And allow the conversation to flow with us and sometimes without us. And so that takes a lot of work. The other two major ecosystems that I think now exist are ones we don't play in very much, and I haven't figured out how to do them for our business. And they're Apple and YouTube, right? So the app space, I still don't think individual, single, smaller scale commercial companies like us are going to be able to develop enough of a big, regular use of an app to get into the Apple space, but that's another place where people have to think about. And YouTube, which, what's the latest count? 24 hours of video uploaded every whatever a second or whatever it is. Enormous quantities of views. They're now hiring people to create content directly for YouTube. They're probably going to get into streaming to compete with Netflix and Hulu and all sorts of bits and pieces. So the creation of video content has now become a channel, a place for it. And given our history of video content, I'd like to believe, though there's no commitment from anyone, I'd like to believe that's something which we can think about as a more established business.
I was going to ask whether or not you actually integrate any of the content from the show in terms of the offers, because you've got all that video content being generated by the reporters out there.
We do it. At the moment, we house the vast majority of it on the Getaway pages inside 9MSN. So if you imagine that, as well as there being Getaway Lounge, the business, there's Getaway, the TV show, and that TV show lives its online presence inside 9MSN, and we spend a lot of time integrated inside that, and there's a lot of content there to view and watch. Yeah.
Cool, okay. Well, I thought we might throw it open to a few questions, so who'd like to be first to raise their hand? Got someone raising a glass. You've stunned them all into silence.
I'm not as big a pull as the Amazon CTO, it would seem.
Anyone? Oh, no, we have a hand. We have a hand.
So, in terms of the question of where should I go next, which of the four ecosystems do you think is sort of best placed to answer the questions that Facebook, sort of querying your friends and your photo folders and trying?
Just for the viewers at home, which of the four ecosystems you mentioned should you go to next?
Well, no, I think just the question was, if you're going to ask that question, where do I go next? Which of those ecosystems? And the answer is, this is the beauty of it, none of them have solved that problem yet. If you type in, and I've done it before, where do I go next in Google, the number 6 or 7 hit is a guy who's got an orc-destroying sword stuck in a rune world in World of Warcraft. Literally asking, I'm stuck in this rune world, where the hell do I go next? Google and Google's at no way yet or shape or form of answering that question, even with all the biasing it's doing of its search results. You do it on Facebook, and you are likely to get a little bit of an answer. But Facebook, of course, is both timing dependent and network dependent. There's a lot of science going on, and we're trying stuff about when you should do a Facebook status update. If you do a status update at around about 10 to 11, you cop a lot of people in offices who read and respond. You do it at around about 4:35, you cop a lot of people who have just completed the school run and come home, put kids in front of television, got them going around to homework, and they're going to be engaged. But you try and get the people from 11 o'clock to view a post that you've done at 5 o'clock, and it's gone. And by the time they check again at 11 o'clock, the stream has gone too far and gotten past it. So Facebook hasn't solved, with all its timelining and work, this temporal challenge of how do you get the story in front of the right eyeballs at the right point in time. So the answer is that none of these things can produce that answer. I envisaged and wrote once about a story where maybe it's Google, maybe it's Facebook, finds a way to give you answers from different streams at the same time. So for example, I type in, where do I go next? And I get a stream of people that are my friends who give some sort of stream of answers. I get a stream of people who are my like people, and these are people who like stuff that I like. I don't know who they are, but Google's been able to sort of determine that I like Bali and I like Tokyo. These people like Bali and Tokyo and somewhere else. Therefore, I'm going to like that something else because we're in the same sort of, the phrase we hear is the like graph. We're in the same sort of like graph together. And then I get another stream, which is the general Google results. Maybe I get another stream, which is from editors, smart travel writers who are writing stuff. And I find a way to aggregate all that with an informed approach as to how to differentiate those different streams. So that's the vision, I think, that I don't know who's going to do it. I've written about it before, but that's the vision, not just in travel. I think you can do that for books, you can do that for music, you can do that for consumable goods, TV shows, where you find a way to mash together experts, your friends, your like graph, and the general web.
So what do you think of Pinterest?
It's amazing, because this is another one of those ones, a little bit like Groupon, where none of us knew it was there, and kaboom, suddenly it was there. And I think I first came across a post by Om Malik in GigaOm, which is one of those great sort of tech blogs, where he suddenly recorded that it was the number 5 visited social media site out of nowhere. And clearly was being a huge driver of commercial activity around clothing in particular and cosmetics in particular. And what's fascinating, if you look at it, it doesn't do that much more that Tumblr does. Not a huge amount more than Tumblr does. It somehow rather has captured an ease of use to do it. And my general view of that is that it's not the end product yet. Once you start to do it en masse and scale, and I've seen large Pinterest pages, it becomes an overwhelming experience and very hard to sort through again. Particularly when you come to travel, where travel has, again, that temporal need in it. If I send out a deal to someone in Phuket and they are nowhere near holiday planning, it's irrelevant to them. And I had to find a way to send them that deal at the time that they're holiday planning. And Pinterest suffers from that same thing. But I do think it says this, and it says a big trend that's going on in social media, which is that I don't know if the text or the word is dying, but certainly the image is growing, right? Facebook spent $1 billion on Instagram, and I saw a great, that's like twice the value of the New York Times, right? They spent on Instagram. Pinterest has gone crazy, 40, 50 million users. Tumblr's got 150 million uniques a month. Based on images, right? Based on photos, not on words, not on blogging text, not on long articles, but based on the sharing of an image. So I do think we will see a dramatic increase in our consumption of image-based social media.
Great, we'll take another question. Gentleman sitting down with the blue shirt.
So Tim, you mentioned the integration of, you like Tokyo and Bali and somebody else likes Tokyo and Bali and something else. Sounds to me like search plus your world. Yeah. The integration of Google+. Do you think that there will be eventually any relevancy behind social search being integrated in a blended environment? And if so, do you think it will be G+ that breaks that? Or will it be that they must come to some arrangement with other social networks and make that?
There's a great anecdote, so the question was about sort of Google+. There's a great anecdote about Google+, that when Google+ and social search first integrated, if you Googled Mark Zuckerberg, the first link up the top was his Google+ page. And the phrase was, maybe there's a more relevant social media environment where you could find out information about Mark Zuckerberg. So I do think Google's got to be very careful in social search about how much it biases Google+. It's also got to be careful about how much it biases YouTube to go off onto a tangent. You know, just because a video's on YouTube versus Vimeo versus 9MSN doesn't mean it's more relevant, but somehow or other in Google it does appear to be a little bit more relevant. But the broader question is on social search, and I think the answer to social search is it should be integrated, provided you make it clear where that answer comes from. Because the critical thing about social search is that you're able to judge the quality of the response based on the person who gave it. So if I say, where do I want to go next? And my 61-year-old stepfather gives me an answer, I'm able to instantly process, due to my understanding and knowledge of him, how much to take into account with that. Which is different to the like what you like systems. The best examples of that are things like iTunes Genius or Last.fm in music, which try to pull together like what I like. And even there, you get this great sense of, I want to know where that recommendation came from. You know, I've listened to, the Black Crows, and I listened to Parliament, and you served me Bjork, which is an actual example of something that Last.fm did to me, and I enjoyed it. How did you get from the Black Crows and Parliament to Bjork? Where is that? It doesn't matter? I mean, maybe it doesn't matter. But I'm interested to know how it worked somehow and how I liked it. But yeah, that's...
Good. We'll take another question. Keep the questions short, please, because I do need to repeat them back. Gentleman with the white shirt and the glasses.
Have you done any analysis after kind of that initial acquisition on which group you should be targeting? So, for example, let's say that I want to go to Rome right now, and I purchase from you immediately. How do you get me to become a repeat customer?
How do you get a customer to become a repeat customer?
It's one of the biggest challenges in travel, repeat customers, because people buy so infrequently. Other than in corporate travel or in people buy twice a year tops. And so our challenge is, as an 11-month and 2-day-old business, is that we are still at the very, very nascent period of our repeat purchase activity. So our answer is to collect data and profile the best we can. So sort of work that we do, and this is standard CRM stuff. What is the gap between signing on and first purchase? And what do we do when people start to get towards the end of that gap and haven't bought anything, typically? At what point do people start to age and stop opening our emails, and what do we need to do to sort of reinvigorate them to open emails? So there's a lot of data crunching to be done there. But as to repeats, we've got a good, and we're happy with our repeat basis, but given that we're sort of 11 months old, we've got a lot more work to do before we know the full extent of our repeat purchasing. Yeah.
Gentleman just raised his... Yes.
ITA.
So what is the future of the travel industry, I think, is a summary of that.
Look, it's a great question. Again, I go back to my point about being a mature industry. $400+ billion almost being spent online. And as you point out, Orbitz, which I shouldn't really comment on as a former employee, but I will talk generally. Between Orbitz, Expedia, Priceline and Travelocity, you've probably got 40% of the online travel intermediary market. So if I exclude airline direct and hotel direct. And if you add in a company in Japan called Rakuten, one in China called Ctrip, What If here in Australia, and a couple of others in Europe, you end up with like 70 or 80% of the online travel intermediary business is in the hands of about 10 or 12 companies. So these companies, oddly enough, are in the same position that a lot of the offline guys were in the early 90s, highly concentrated market power, and doing very similar things to what they were doing before. And yet emerging from it are models that change and revolutionise things. And two of the best examples of that, firstly, was Kayak and Sidestep, who first launched MetaSearch, which is the ability to search more than one site in one go. And then, of course, Groupon itself, which came out of nowhere to be a massive seller of travel. And, of course, we all followed into a model or similar models. So I think the answer is disruption is not over, and the disruption will be around trying to answer these open-ended questions and trying to do more complex itineraries. And we see that, those 4 companies I mentioned in Australia trying to do innovative things in search. We've got scores of other companies in America. Another example, if you haven't seen it, have a look at a company called Hipmunk, HIPMUNK. Fascinating what they're trying to do in travel search, all trying to trying to catch these large, big, now mature online travel businesses napping. And all underlined under that, you've got the suppliers stealing more and more share. I mean, the biggest seller of airline tickets online in Australia is Qantas. There's no ifs, no buts. They're the dominant force. If you sort of include Jetstar in their mix. The largest online travel, one of the largest online travel visited brands for hotels in America is Marriott. Starwood, Accor here in Australia gets 65% of its web business direct to Accor.com. So there is a massive push by the suppliers as well. So wrapping all that together, I suspect I see that we'll see a whole whack of innovation around the discovery, inspiration and open-ended question answering, and that's where the next blast of growth in online travel will come. The other sector I've got my eye on, and I'll start with a trite comment which I think I stole from originally from Mike Walsh many years ago, which is that everybody who was born in 1994 is now turning 18. Now, why is that important? Because the internet was born in 1994. So everybody who was born when the internet was born now graduated from high school, and they've become economic entities. And a wave of them in 5 or 6 years will become significant economic entities with their first job and will hit the internet with a smash, knowing nothing else, literally knowing nothing else. And they will drive massive shift in models, along the likes of what we've seen in peer-to-peer hotel sales with Airbnb and 9 Flats. If you're not aware of those businesses, that's where you can put up your couch, put up a room in your house, put up your whole house, put up a villa at various times for peer-to-peer sales of travel. And I expect that model to take on a whole new series of innovations that I haven't yet come up with as these younger people become economic entities and start to do the backpacking that I did, but do it with smartphones in their pocket.
We'll take one more, I think, before we let you get back to the bar. Yep.
You mentioned artificial intelligence and natural language processing. Have you seen anything to do with user agents who might specialise in a complex field like this, such as travel, solving queries locally?
Are you seeing user agents, and I assume you mean artificial intelligent user agents, starting to ask and answer queries about travel?
No. And I very rarely do I give a one-word answer to any question. And
you didn't.
And I didn't.
You started by saying no, and then you kept going. Yeah.
No, I haven't. And I don't know. Travel is so complex. I don't know. I'll give you an example of how complex travel is. I was in a company that was doing a network migration to a new platform. And we decided that platform that certain searches should have default results. And what the classic example is, someone types in Paris, you make the default result Paris, France. Don't even give them the option of thinking about Paris, Texas. Who the hell would ever think about Paris, Texas? But then we exported that system and realised that what do you do with the word Newcastle when English people are going to be searching for it and Australians are going to be searching for it? And what do you do for King's Cross when English people are going to be searching for it and Australians are going to be searching for it? And so figuring out how to do technological solutions just around destination location we haven't really figured out how to crack, let alone getting computers to tell you the best place to stay in Phuket. Yeah.
Fair enough. I think on that note, I'd like you all to please join me in thanking Tim